Our title for our presentation is MGM's Big Bet on the House, because we really believe that this is an investment, that MGM is in the business of making bets. So we see this bet as an investment that is strategic and is good for the planet and good for business. So we'll introduce ourselves here and jump into the meat of our presentation.
Hello, my name is Kendall Beyondich. I'm the lead legal consultant.
Hi, my name is Lucy Lund. I'm the lead ethics consultant.
Hello, my name is Praniti Verma and I'm the lead research consultant.
Hi, I'm Nikita and I'm lead financial consultant.
And my name is Tyler Holsample and I am the lead strategy consultant. As we're moving into it, we'll give you a brief agenda of what we're going to be talking about today, just to give a framework and set us up for success. So we'll start out with just some information that you'll already be familiar with, some of the company overview. And what we'll talk about is some key metrics that we found as pointing us to our opportunities. So we'll start out with that. We'll get into our identified opportunities. We'll explain what those are briefly. Our areas of consideration are those three that we'll have a particular pattern of talking through. Once we make our suggestions, we will say this is where we're going to be able to implement them, how they relate to the ethical concerns, and of course we'll close with what is that in a measured amount financially. Why don't we start with just some overview, just for context.
Yeah, so as you already know, MGM is a global hospitality and entertainment company that has a market cap of $16 billion. And last year, it generated a revenue of $13 billion. It currently has 31 hotels and resorts around the world, and 12 of them are on the Las Vegas Strip. Now we're going to go a little more into your sustainability goals. So your sustainability goals is twofold. So one, you're reducing carbon emissions by 45%, and then you're reducing energy consumption by 25%. And those two goals tie into the SDG 7, which says ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And then more specifically, we wanted to target SDG 7.3, which is by 2030, we want to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. So we did a little more research about some of your financials, and we saw that utilities is a big part of your spending. So it accounts for $220 million. And we saw that electricity is a big part of your utility bill. So then we wanted to focus more on electricity, and that we can see that it breaks into 4 parts. So we have HVAC, lighting, games, and other, and we're going to focus more on HVAC, lighting, and games because that's the majority of the spending, and we see that it presents an opportunity for us to make improvements.
All right, so our presentation today is mainly going to be focusing on that electrical wastage that we were discussing earlier. My colleagues have done quite a bit of research on this in particular. So our solutions are going to be focused on these 3 areas within electrical wastage. So it's going to have to do with neon lights, slot machines, and then ventilation. So we're going to be looking at some of the risks associated with these electrical waste issues that we're bringing up. These are the issues that we are going to want to be, addressing today in terms of our solutions for MGM as a whole. We're looking at resource depletion. Electric waste is a huge issue. So we're looking both at the resource depletion issues that come with that and preventing some of the environmental degradation that comes with those issues. An example would be lead into the water if it's not managed correctly or if there's too much. We're going to be, of course, looking at financials. We understand that MGM is a very large corporation. We want to be making solutions that are financially friendly and beneficial to the company as a whole. And then that also impacts brand image in terms of looking at personal and social responsibility. So that's kind of our final issue that we're kind of incorporating our solutions with. We want to make sure that press is good for MGM. We want to make sure as a company that they are socially responsible, environmentally and ethically responsible. So we are trying to incorporate all of these in our solutions that we are presenting to you today.
So here's our areas of consideration, and the way that we're going to be talking about this is a particular pattern that we'll go through. We'll first identify what the problem is within those 3 categories. Then we'll say what is our solution and our recommendation. Then we'll talk about the money, the financial aspects, and we'll close with legal. Now let's stay on the slide for a moment. as the decision makers, we will ask that we can ultimately incorporate these, but if we do components, we can maybe talk about that as well. So hopefully we can convince that this is a viable solution. Yeah, go ahead. Well, we'll start with our first recommendation regarding the neon signs and really what the problem we caught that exists now. So in Las Vegas right now, we have currently, or MGM currently has 2,000 miles worth of neon pipes. So if you were to connect all of those together, you could think of that from Los Angeles all the way to Ohio. So it's a long distance of electricity that is used. Now, some of the issues with neon are that not only are they energy inefficient, but they're also producing heat. There's a ton of maintenance expenses that you have to keep refueling the neon, which these are costly, not only for the maintenance, but also just the electrical usage, which is nearly 1,800 homes worth of kilowatt hours. So that was our first identity. Now, the solution that we have is to replace these neons with LED lighting, mainly because LEDs are saving upwards of 60% of the energy. If we think of that distance from Los Angeles to Ohio, it would just be shorted. The needed energy is just from Los Angeles to Colorado. It's a lot closer, a lot less energy is necessary. A couple of the benefits with the LEDs are that they last a lot longer, don't need that maintenance cost, which is the largest expense. And one of the reasons that neon is still used, because you'd say, why is the LED not already in place? Well, in the past, neons were much brighter. However, the technology is improving so much that LED installation is a lot more viable today than it was in the past. So that's why we're recommending it now. Now we'll pass it over to our financials to recommend why this is still a wise decision.
So now we look at the financial aspect in terms of implementation cost and the average savings that we'll have after implementing LEDs. So the average cost of installation is $85 million, considering an average of $18 per LED. We'll have this amount, and since we are implementing the LEDs in 2,000 mile distance, so this is that's why the reason of this cost. And then we'll have the labor amount that will use to implement the LEDs, and then the maintenance cost is $5 million. So this amount is less as compared to the neon, since neon require higher maintenance and they needs to be replaced every 3 years, and it needs refueling as well. So the total cost would be $100 million. And in terms of energy saving, we'll have, since LEDs are 60% more efficient, so this would save $1.6 million. And in terms of maintenance, we have $24 million. So this is a huge amount for neon maintenance, since as stated earlier, like it requires higher maintenance. So our total annual savings would be $25 million, and the payback period for all the investment that we'll be doing is for 4 years. Now we'll look at the legal aspect of the problem.
All right, so because we are focusing on Las Vegas as our example, we're using Nevada law here. So we're looking at the Nevada revised statute, this code right at the top here. So this is the overarching law that we're going to be discussing when we're talking about all three of our proposed solutions, because we're looking at electric consumption. So this policy in particular, Nevada as a state has this policy in place where they're trying to look at electric energy conservation as a relationship between all three levels of government and both public and private businesses. So we want to make sure that when we are making these changes or suggestions to the company, that we're staying in compliance with this idea that Nevada has in its policy. Continuing on, Nevada's renewable portfolio standard, this came out a few years ago. The standard portfolio was created with the idea that in 2030, all businesses are going to be expected to have at least half of their energy run by renewable sources. So, as you know, as MGM, we came out with those reports in 2022 in terms of making sure that we are on the track for that 2030 plan. We are in compliance with where it is at the moment. So the last number that we have here is our ESG rating. It's at 24.9. This is a risk rating, so it's out of 50, which is, we're like smack dab in the middle of it. The importance of looking at this is we are at medium risk. This number is generated by looking at kind of the risks associated with our resources that we use as a company, environmentally, ethically, that sort of thing. In terms of our electric consumption, that is a part of it. We're also looking at an average level risk management rating that we've gotten in terms of that. So we're making this suggestion because regulation has increased in the past years. We're looking at increased regulation. We don't want to just be meeting bare minimum as a company. We want to be doing better and brighter things. We want to be, concerned about our ethics, our sustainability as a whole. So these suggestions are in line with legal, but also we want to be making these suggestions so that we can do better as a whole in this context.
Moving on to the second opportunity that we identified, that is the slot machines. As you're very well aware that MGM currently has 28,794 slot machines that operate for 24 hours per day globally. Based on our calculations, they consume an average of 63 million kilowatt hours of energy, which in turn leads to an emission of 51.5 million pounds of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to greenhouse gas emission from 60 million miles driven by an average gasoline-powered vehicle. So the solution to tackle this problem would be to ensure that we are reducing the slot machines' energy use. And so this can be done by implementing Energy Star certification in all of the buildings, which would help improve efficiency by 35%. The next step would be to install sensors that would implement power saving mode and sleep mode, which would help with the efficiency decreasing by 15 to 20%. The next step would be to install energy efficient motors, compressors, and fans, which would help improve efficiency by 60%. Last but not the least, we want to make sure that our machines are running efficiently, therefore regular maintenance is a must.
Now we'll consider the financial aspect of the slot machines. Since this first solution is Energy Star certification, so Energy Star certification is improves the efficiency by 60%. So while there is no cost of verification for a particular building, they certify on an average cost of $1,500. And since we have 13 casinos, so this would cost around $50,000. Second solution is sensors. So considering an average cost of $25 per sensor, so we'll implement this in 28,794 slot machines. So this would cost around $900,000. And the third solution is energy efficient motors. Same way, considering an average of $150 per motor, it would cost $5 million, and the total would be $6 million. Now, after implementing all these solutions, we'll achieve an efficiency on average of 30%, and this would save us $2.5 million in terms of cost, in terms of savings, and the payback period would be 2.5 years.
All right, so legal considerations. So we are again looking at an overarching Nevada law in regard to making this relationship that we want to be upholding between the government and the businesses as a whole with electrical conservation. We are now looking, in particular with slot machines, there are some concerns with CO2 emissions because they are creating them. So we're looking at that EPA Clean Air Act for CO2 emissions. As we've been kind of having this theme, MGM is basically meeting bare minimum on all of these things. It's average, it's meeting the requirement, but we want to be doing better. There has been, in recent years, California, DC, a few other states have really been trying to push that envelope in terms of being even better than what the EPA is coming out with in terms of what they want to see in these regulations, what they want to see in these numbers. Nevada, too, has also been increasing this as well. So we really want to be taking these solutions into consideration for the purposes of knowing that these regulations are going to keep increasing, going to keep pushing for better numbers, better regulations as a whole. And so we want to make sure that we're considering these environmental issues as well.
So now we're going to go into the third opportunity. So we already mentioned that heating, cooling, and ventilation accounts for 60% of electricity. So that contributes significantly to the carbon footprint. It currently consumes 651 million kilowatt hours of energy, and that translates into 532 million pounds of CO2. And we know that smoking is allowed in almost every casino on the Las Vegas Strip, so we don't want to reduce ventilation because that's used to reduce odors. We want to not only reduce harm, but also make your company impact positive. So our first solution is to use something that generates renewable energy, which is to implement anaerobic digesters. So digesters converts food waste into methane gas and other biogases, and that is used to generate electricity. And we know there's concerns that methane gas affects the environment, but we found out that if you actually contain the methane gas properly, it actually contributes positively to the atmosphere because it reduces carbon emissions by 10%, rather than leaving on a landfill and having it generate greenhouse gases. So currently MGM generates around 100,000 tons of food waste a year, but we found that we only need 5,000 tons of food waste to sustain MGM's ventilation usage. So with the rest of the food waste that we're throwing into landfills, we can use it to power either slot machines or neon lights. And I just want to emphasize that no other casino has implemented this yet, so MGM is going to be a pioneer in the sustainability space and also set a precedent for future companies. And there's a handprint on the screen because we not only want to reduce carbon footprint, but make more handprints.
Now we'll look more into the financial aspect of implementation cost and the savings that we'll achieve after implementing digester. So on average, a digester costs around $2.5 million, and since we will be implementing it globally, so we are considering 10 digesters, and the total cost would be $25 million. And since we have to consider converting methane gas into energy, so this would require an initial plant setup. So this would cost $10 million, and the maintenance cost would be $10 million considering the motors and the labor costs that would be involved in that. So the total cost would be $45 million. And to run the plant efficiently, we would require a total cost of $15 million that would involve the rent and the property and maintenance expenses. So the total savings that we'll achieve from this is energy savings would be $78 million. So this is the electricity bill that MGM will save annually after implementing digester, and the waste that goes to landfill will also be automatically saved, and the cost of sending the waste to landfills costs around $7 million. So this would total result in annual saving of $70 million, and the payback period is 2.7 years. So payback period 2.7 years we have considered since the plant setup would take some time, and the cost would not be covered in that part. So the 2.7, so we have calculated the payback period as 2.7 years. I know all the solutions involve a huge amount of investment, but we are considering doing good for the planet, so we recommend making all this solution in the MGM. Now, looking at the legal aspect.
Yes, so this is the final legal considerations. So again, we are looking at this overarching theme from Nevada's revised code. Just because of how environmentally friendly this is, we do feel that this is going to be, very promotional in that sense. Because these are ventilation systems that we're looking at to be charging, really, we're looking at the residential codes for both Nevada and internationally. At the moment, we are, again, within compliance for those, but we want to be doing better in this sense. So this code that's right here, the third bullet, this is another Nevada code. We wanted to put this in here because there is a prohibition on the waste of oil and gas, but there's no specific law as of yet for vents in particular. So we do see that coming up in recent years. That will probably be something to take into consideration when we make this solution happen. In terms of having these plants and doing this sort of thing, the EPA guidelines for anaerobic sorts of science is going to be what we're looking at in terms of keeping it within compliance. So as long as when we make these things, we're keeping within these guidelines, totally legal, going to be supported in compliance and that sort of thing, and again, be supporting the overarching Nevada revised code in this way.
We'll talk now about implementation steps. Now, as the decision makers, ultimately you guys would be the ones that would help push this forward, and we believe that these are the right things to do. So if we were to take these upon, and implement them, our first steps regarding at least neon signs would be to first inventory all the lighting fixtures and figure out exact timings for when the neon lights are going to expire, because what we'll want to do is finish their cycle before we replace them, because otherwise we would be wasteful. Then we can appropriately recycle the glass that was necessary for the neons as well. We'll set up a timeline to order our LEDs and of course to get those installed in place.
When it comes to the slot machines, our first step would be to implement Energy Star certification in all of the machines. Next, we want to install sensors and energy efficient motors. It should be noted that we highly recommend doing both of these side by side to ensure that we are saving time as well as cost. And finally, regular maintenance to ensure that all the machines are running efficiently and also to maintain high customer services.
For ventilation, we want to collect food more efficiently and try to donate some of the food to nearby communities. And secondly, we want to implement the digesters, and we have to still do regular maintenance on them so that we ensure proper containment of methane gas.
We strongly recommend that you, the MGM board, take our recommendations into serious consideration to address the ethical concerns that we raised earlier. This will not only help you achieve long-term benefits, but will also help you fulfill your social responsibility towards your stakeholders. It is very well known that MGM holds itself up to high ethical standards of business conduct and corporate governance. Our solutions will only help you take one step further in that direction. We want to do so by ensuring that there's transparency when it comes to your shareholders, promoting safe working conditions for employees, offering high-quality services while maintaining your social responsibility towards your customers, and upholding that ever-increasing standard of business conduct and corporate social responsibility towards your community as a whole. Now I'll hand it off to Tyler, who will talk about how you can measure your impact of our solutions.
Ultimately, MGM is a business and we care about what is that impact. So if we were to put these implementations in, we have an upfront cost, which is of course with any project, but what we're ultimately saving is going to exceed that with our annual savings over multiple years, our energy savings, which is good for our electrical grid that is included in the financial savings, and of course our carbon reduction, because ultimately one of those sustainable issues with electrical wastage is the carbon that is emitted. So those savings as well can be promoted in our marketing, convince consumers that MGM is doing well, and tagging on to what our goals already are, addressing the SDG number 7 that we talked about before. So if we sum these up, of course, these are just the sums of the last slides. 2 minutes, thank you. We have almost $100 million in savings, and summing up the electrical savings, it's 29 million kilowatts, which is about equivalent to 2,900 homes worth of energy. And the carbon emission that's saved through all of these projects would be like taking 7,500 cars off the road for a whole year, which of course is great for carbon savings. As we wrap up here, we are, as we said at the beginning, hoping that MGM takes on this bet. MGM's in the business of bets, and it's a bet on green, because green is really what the future is. And as we say, it's a bet on the house, because the house always wins. So thank you guys. We're happy to answer your questions here with our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The boards are always interested in ways in which the house can win. A question for you. You framed the presentation to us in terms of ethical standards. Help me understand why this isn't just an operational improvement in operating costs. We're constantly looking at ways to be more efficient. How do you link together those ethical standards with what you're recommending, which are really operational improvements?
I can start with it. So overall, our main ethical concern was the carbon emission that was released into the air, and that would degrade the environmental conditions. So the basis of our presentation was to ensure that we are consuming less energy. And we not only want to do less bad, but we also want to do more good, which is where our solution for the ventilation comes in, which will not only help us eliminate a lot of greenhouse gas that is depicted into the environment because of landfills, but will instead convert that energy into methane gas, which in turn can be used to power our ventilation system. So overall, our ethical concerns can be summed up into making the environmental conditions better.
Can I add to that as well? Yeah, I also want to add to that ultimately ethics is about doing good, and how you define good is really what the education is going through. And we really see the only way to do good business, though, is by doing good. And we see that that is a trend in the educational setting as well, and that's what we're learning through the school systems.
How will this help our brand going forward? These are all internal things we're going to do to improve and have some impact, certainly with regard to improving our carbon footprint and all the other things. But how do we gain any improvement in our brand by doing this? Is there a plan to market this or to communicate this?
So as you are very well aware that MGM releases its sustainability report every year. And customers are increasingly becoming more and more interested in those reports. So all of our solutions and the impact of them would be depicted in those reports that would be conveyed to all the stakeholders, which would definitely help with the brand image.
Brian?
Yeah, just as far as looking at the statistics that you rolled out, you pinpointed 3 areas to look at the slot machines, the neon signs, what have you. I was wondering if you also looked into the electrical costs behind the hotels and the hallways and the rooms, and what percentage factor that played was my first question. The second question is, from a legal standpoint, was there any differentiation between legal matters here in Nevada and the United States and other MGM properties throughout the globe? And my last question was more on the sustainability. You put a slide of $100 million in food waste, of which we're only taking advantage of 5% of that recycling, if I had that correct. And what are some of the options that you explored for the other 95% of the food waste recycling?
I can take up the first question. You all have done an amazing job as MGM board members because most of the MGM hotels already have sensors for electricity, which saves a lot of electricity for you. And most of your buildings are LEED certified, which essentially means that all of your buildings are eco-friendly. So for the hotels, for the hotels and for the resorts, most of these are already implemented. So you have already done an amazing job so far, which is why we particularly wanted to focus on the casinos, which has opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, so for legal, your second question in terms of the international work. So of course, every state has its own regulations, every country has its own sort of policies when it comes to these sorts of things. In terms of that, MGM is of course keeping in with compliance, otherwise they wouldn't be able to continue their business everywhere that they are. The main reason why we set it up this way was just so that we had kind of an example prototype of saying it, but the part where we're talking about, we're trying to do better than the standards, Nevada, California, they're kind of the ones who are pushing this regulation in terms of being the best. So if we're meeting those ones and we can do better, that's kind of where our focus was, if that answers your question.
Sure.
Yeah, so we said that MGM currently produces 100,000 tons of food waste, and they send about half of that to landfill. The other half, they donated to nearby communities, but that's only like 1%. And then the rest, they sent to pig farms, so they're also doing this digester, and then the pig farms would use it to generate energy. So instead of like outsourcing that, we can do it ourselves, because that would help us save money. And then not only that, we can help power, like even generate electricity for communities in Nevada, and then also donate more food to people around the country, nonprofits, yeah.
Thank you. Jen?
I'm wondering if you have any information on how we're hitting the average for the minimum of our sustainability responsibilities. Are our practices of using too much electricity, producing too much methane, affecting the surrounding communities of where the casinos are?
So every time MGM starts to open a property in any area, they do a lot of community research. And MGM has had a lot of pushback when it comes to opening new locations, as you're very well aware. That is mainly because the community is now becoming more and more conscious of the environmental impact that any business has. So currently, all the established properties are meeting the minimum criteria. But as we mentioned before, we don't only want to do the bare minimum. We want to go way above and beyond to help our community. And once all of this is communicated to the community, once all of our solutions are implemented, it's only going to help the community as a whole. And it will also help open job opportunities, which ties back into how we can help our society.
And is that part of your marketing plan? You're going to be releasing the sustainability report and incorporating more green to the consumers. And then there's marketing for community outreach.
Yes, all of this will be depicted in the SDG, in the sustainability report of MGM. So currently, MGM has a very detailed sustainability report where it clearly states what it aims to achieve, what it has already achieved, and where it wished it would be in the next couple of years. So our recommendations were also formed on the basis of what goals they wanted to achieve by a certain year that they were kind of struggling with. Our solutions will help them achieve those goals not only by that time, but even sooner.
We would also add to that the press that you're discussing also is impacted by politics, of course. So the legal aspects that we're talking about with this push for more regulation, that's going to be helping with that sort of press as well, not just in sort of looking at the reports and that sort of thing, but also in terms of lobbyists and those sorts of issues as well, which MGM is a very large corporation. They deal with this sort of thing quite often, so it will help with that as well.
I think adding on.
I'm sorry, we didn't adjust the meet. Do you,
No, Fahima.
you have a question?
Yes, I do. First of all, I think you guys did a great job. I have a couple questions. One is, are there any cautionary tales that you can pull from in the industry when you look at some of our competitors? Are there any instances where we've seen some of our competitors on the market fail to step up, and that would advise us, and kind of give us a sense of urgency about this? Because we see all the numbers and everything, and yes, there's some we want to be ethical, and there's a feel-good factor to that, but what happens if we don't do it? Is there anybody who's gone down for this that we can learn from? That's the first question. And then the second question is around any leading indicators on the legal side. So you showed us, kind of how we're doing the minimum. We're not violating any laws right now. We're in keeping with the current regulations, but is there anywhere the legal landscape is going that you can see on the horizon that, hey, listen, in a few years, we're starting to see this happen in other states. It's probably going to come to Nevada. We should act now so that we're ahead of the curve with regards to our competitors.
So I definitely think that yes, we should be alarmed with our carbon emissions because, as you're aware, 3 to 4 years ago, all the casinos were under a huge fire for the amount of energy they used. It was all over the news, and people were pushing back and demanding that all the casinos remove their neon signage. Some of the casinos did that, whereas MGM hasn't removed all of those neon signage. There are still a considerably large and huge neon signs that are still being used. Which is why we wanted to push and take that further step to ensure that we are beating our competitors and making sure that we are caring for our society.
And I want to add that, I don't know about our current competitors, but companies in different industries such as Shein, they don't really ethically source their materials that they're making their clothing from, and they've lost millions of dollars in revenue. And then also, if we compare the ESG index versus the S&P index, the ESG outperforms S&P by a lot. So financially, it's just a good decision.
And in terms of, sorry, what was the last part of your question?
The last one was the legal horizon. So are there laws that are coming that we need to kind of get ahead of? I know we're complying now, but yes. What's coming down the pipe?
Okay, so the portfolio that I mentioned on an earlier slide, I had to do with, I think it was the first one with neon, so I'm not sure if you were quite seated yet. So with that one, it had to do with, there's this plan by 2030 that they want half of all energy used in businesses to be from renewable sources. So there is kind of this push, especially like politically and just environmentally conscious people are kind of making all of our shareholders and that sort of thing. So they're getting stricter, like just they're having these plans by 2030. Current things are getting pushed. The states are kind of almost one-upping each other in terms of the EPA conditions that have been set out as well. So it looks like there's going to be more legislation. We're already seeing kind of this tightening on the regulations. So it's not so much that we're looking for like a brand new law that's going to come out and kind of create issues. It's that we're seeing kind of this narrowing on what's allowed. And eventually if we don't put in, bigger installations in terms of helping with this conservation, you're going to kind of be running the line because we are only meeting that average. So instead of being ahead of the game, it's going to be like you're trying to play catch up very quickly if we get to this year and we haven't really dealt with it yet. So that's kind of the issue that a lot of companies are having.
Another question. So the anaerobic digester is very interesting to me because we generate all this food waste anyway. I don't know a lot about anaerobic digesters. So wherever that would go up, do you think we're going to face pushback from the community that maybe there's going to be unpleasant smells in the neighborhoods where we set these up? Do you know anything about
They're
how that would work?
normally located on farms, so a lot of the residential areas are kind of far away already. And we did more research into like smells and stuff, and it actually said there wasn't really a smell to it. So the output, there is no smell.
And we want to make sure that we are installed, that the land we're using for it would be in a secluded area.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
so
even
it doesn't need to be close to the property
No,
necessarily?
no.
And these will be implemented globally, so we'll have like, this will not be in particular position like all the tin digesters, so it would be spread across.
You're asking us to make a $151 million investment, and you show the implementation plan. Over what period of time, and the payback. So the payback is there, but over what period of time? So do we make the investment now? You're asking us to make it now and get that return, or is it a staggered implementation? It showed the different steps in there, but when are you looking for the capital outlay? Over what period of time?
So this is basically like, it's a huge investment to make, and like LED implementation and the digester, it would be spread across, like it will not be implemented like in a short period of time, it will take some time. So all the total investment will be spread across, and the average return on all these investment would be around 2.5 years.
So we can start with the investment on ventilation, because that saves us essentially more money, and the money that we save using that can be used for implementation for neon signage as well as slot machines.
Yeah. I was just trying to get a sense of when that return would kick in, because it depends on when you make the investment, you're going to get the return. And are the assumptions here on all of our current operations, to the degree that we add sites, we add hotels, we add any international casinos, how will that impact, the numbers that you have in terms of returns?
Yeah, so we based ours mostly on Las Vegas. So if anything, we have kind of made a conservative estimation on some of our expenditures. Okay. Now, to your point though, as the business is growing, developing new properties, or just acquiring new positions, we just see these as just starting points, and then we can be adding to this. So this would be the conservative estimation. So current operations.
So the investment is only on our Las Vegas.
We would like to start with Las Vegas and then eventually move further.
Other than the ventilations, which we did mention, those are the ones that are global. So we might have not bifurcated those very well.
And the reason for choosing Las Vegas was because currently out of all of the imaging properties, it consumes the most energy and produces the more waste.
Okay. What risk, you showed some there, what risk is the board, do we have to be concerned about?
I would say one of the most important things that we should make sure we really nail this down would be the methane that's produced by our digesters, to make sure that we are conserving it responsibly so that there's no leak, because that that would be bad. So we want to make sure that we're within compliance of everything, and not even within compliance, we definitely want to go way above and beyond to ensure that we're collectively storing it. Another would be responsible collection of food waste. Since we are making an assumption here that all the food waste that is going into the landfills, rather than doing that, we want to put it into our digesters. So that has to be done very efficiently while ensuring that we're also donating the 1% food to our community.
Judges, any other questions? No. Well, thank you very much. We'll,
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, MGM board, for your time. And we have another meeting tomorrow, and we'll meet you sharp at 8 a.m.
well, we can step out of our MGM board roles for a minute and provide you some feedback in terms of what might be helpful as you go forward, both in the competition and in your careers. So do any of the board members have any suggestions or thoughts or observations on the presentation?
I would just say, just in general, as you are getting more familiar with these types of presentations, put yourself in those uncomfortable spots, because they're going to kind of harden you to some of the anxiety that comes with presenting. You know, the use of your body language is going to be important in how you provide energy to a room and capture the attention of your audience.
Yeah, one thing I would add is just, it's always helpful to put yourself in the shoes of the audience. So in this case, you're talking to a company. Companies are about, they are about a triple bottom line if they're a good company, but they are about what's in it for them as well. So I would even be bold about it and have a what's in it for you slide. You know, think through that second layer of questions, like our chair of the board was asking, how are we going to get credit for this? Think through that, make it plain, spell it out. You know, hey, we think you should put this in the sustainability report, maybe do a brand, not a brand redesign, but, you know, mention it in your branding about MGM, you know, betting on green, or something that differentiates you from the rest of your competitors and signals to the consumer, hey, you should come do business with us, you should come stay at our hotels as opposed to the others, because we're intentionally being green. We're intentionally doing this for you, for the community, for the planet. So be bold and think through that second layer, and put yourself in the audience's shoes and answer their questions preemptively. They're going to care about how they're going to get credit. They're going to care about what's in it for them. They're going to care about, is this a phased approach, or do we dump all the money into this at once? You know, so thinking through that second layer and mapping it out very clearly.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was really impressed with how you handled the questions and had, you know, extra information you hadn't shared. For the slide, I think this slide is a good example. You know, we want to listen to you and see a few like really sharp bullet points or a graphic. So I think that getting away from too much text on a slide, it's, you know, it's not a report. So that bullet point could, you know, energy conservation and government relationships. There's maybe a way to kind of tighten it, and then you can expound on it in your speech. And then if you, you know, I know you were doing the slides, but if you have to be back a little further, I'd say just, you know, make sure there's no one standing in front of you, and project. If you know, if you do have to be on stage a little more, then be a little louder.
So these are all good comments that I certainly agree with. I think the point you were making in terms of the audience, you know, when you present to the executive team, it's different than when you present to a board, it's different than when you present to a community or an organization. And to think about where your audience is, what they're thinking about in terms of their responsibilities, it makes a huge difference. You know, your organization was well, you started off at the beginning, you went into the detail, you were able to answer our questions, you were on top of it. And the only suggestion I would make is identify the risk because, particularly the board, they're going to see all the upside from the consultants. They're going to zero in on what's the risk? What's going to happen? What do we have to be concerned about? How long is it going to take? Where do we have to do the outlay of the money? That's kind of where they're thinking. And it's something just to consider as you continue on with your careers and with the presentations. But we thank you very much. This is a lot of investment of your time, a lot of work. You did a really good job. And we wish you the very best going forward with the next part of this, which is the 10-minute and the 90-second. And you're over the big hump now, so you can kind of take a deep breath, and get ready for tomorrow. So do you have any questions that we can answer for you? If not, thank you very much and best of luck.